Welcome back to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament, of course, is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast. Check out all of the podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. So many things. I mean, articles, academies. You've heard the spiel before. The bookstore, get all that stuff. Have you pre-ordered Chad's book yet? I mean, come on. It's an Old Testament book. It's a book about the Psalms. So, I mean, probably need to pre-order that. There's a link for that, no doubt, in the show notes. So get that thing pre-ordered, and you want to get that as soon as it comes out. We ended in Isaiah chapter 36. We're getting a little historical background, but it's not super boring. At least so you're getting some lofty speeches. You're getting some intimidating talk in this historical background. So it's not just names and dates, but you're getting some rhetoric as well. And we ended with, one of the great passages of all Scripture where we have some guy tell the people of Israel, hey, the Lord told me to go and destroy you guys, and I want you to hear that because the options are full surrender or eat your own dung, drink your own urine. And that is how we ended the last episode.
Nothing boring about the Bible, right? Got some scatological rhetoric going on here. Quite the threat. Yeah, so the guy who said that is the Assyrian representative. He's the mouthpiece of Sennacherib, who is the Assyrian king at the time. He took the throne, and he had some problems to deal with back home with some of those rebellious Babylonian guys. This is before the rise of Babylon. That's going to come later. So he had to put down some of their stuff going on. And then he moved to the west, and one of the kings that he wanted to deal with is our friend Hezekiah, who is now sitting trapped in Jerusalem with the Assyrian army around them. And we have this guy whose title is the Rabshakeh, or however you want to say it. Anyway, it's a title. He's the mouthpiece. He's the guy talking. He's the one who just threatened them with eating their own dung and drinking their own urine. And he's now wanting to let everybody know who is within earshot, who's on the wall of Jerusalem, what's going to happen. So that's how we're going to pick it up here with verse 13. Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah. So this guy is an Assyrian who is multilingual because he is speaking in clear Hebrew. Here's what he says. Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Don't let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. For thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out. Then each of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern. You got to appreciate at least on the surface level, the rhetoric here. He's like, hey, if you guys don't want to eat your own dung and drink your own urine, there is another option here. Make peace with me, and you can have wine from your own vine, and you can eat your figs, and you can drink water from your own cistern. There's a better option, but to get that option, you have to have full surrender.
I feel like this is definitely a lie.
Definitely a lie. Yeah.
I know you're trying to juxtapose these two things, and I can appreciate the rhetoric. But is anyone buying that? Hey, listen, man, you surrender, treat you as equals. You know what? We'll give you a house and a well and a vineyard. What are you talking about, man? You might be overselling this surrender a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's some overselling going on here. Yeah, because he's not even done. So after you have your vines and fig trees and water from your own cisterns, then so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come and I'll take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Oh yeah, I bet you will do that. Just to wrap this up, verse 18, beware lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Have any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of the Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? You know, there's too far, and there's way, way, way too far. And the Rabshakeh has gone way, way too far here. Because what has he done, basically? Well, he's not just kind of spit in the face of God. He's basically saying he's greater than all of these gods. And therefore, according to this twisted logic, he's also greater than the God of the Hebrews. He's greater than Yahweh himself. So this is like hyper arrogance that's speaking here, which is, you don't have to spend very much time studying the Persians and the Babylonians and the Assyrians and all the kings of these great ancient kingdoms to realize that, for them, humility was not a virtue. Arrogance was a virtue. I'm surprised these guys could even walk upright. Their heads were so big.
Well, I know we talked about this when we were going through, Second Kings, and one of the things that's true, if you were to take it out of the Bible and then read, the literature from these groups, read the histories. Not only did they, okay, this nation has that God, and Israel's got that God, whatever. They viewed their kings, when they say King of Kings and that kind of stuff, they viewed them as deities, basically. So part of what's happening here is that he's not just saying that hey, your gods are weak, but that your gods are all subservient to me. I'm greater than all of them. I myself am a god. I'm the messenger for a God greater than all of these gods, which is the king of Assyria. Who they treated them as I am God. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's an important historical fact to bear in mind, because we're not. We might sometimes say a politician's, oh man, he's so full of himself. Who does he think he is, a god?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Yeah, maybe that kind of pride and arrogance, not maybe, but yeah, it's something that can any of us can fall prey to. But they actually believe that in the ancient world.
Yeah. Well, if you ask that politician, what do you think, you're God? He'd be like, no, of course not. If you ask the king of Assyria if he thinks he's God, he'll tell you he is.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was this deification or divinization of royalty. This was a real thing in the ancient world. The Egyptians believed their pharaoh was an incarnation of the gods. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at the kind of the broader sweep of history, the way this works in the New Testament is, so you have Alexander the Great coming through, conquering that part of the world in the 4th century, so in the 330s. And before that, the Greeks didn't really think in those terms. So we're talking different part of the world. We're talking the Fertile Crescent, Egypt, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Egyptians. The Greeks didn't really think of their rulers in those terms. Well, along comes Alexander, and he begins to flirt with these notions of the deity of monarchs. Well, then that kind of works its way into the Greek Hellenized world, which also then, over time, begins to affect the way that the Romans also thought of their Caesars. And so you begin to have, over time, and you can see this gradual embracing, this gradual growth of this, and it ends up being emperor worship, which is full-blown by the time you get into the book of Acts and to the writings of Paul's epistles, to where you visit one of these cities in modern-day Turkey, and you've got altars to the Caesar. So that's kind of the long historical arc of how this worked its way from the Old Testament, ancient Near East, to the pages of the New Testament.
Yeah, well, why do you think it is that the religious leaders can say we have no God but Caesar, and that is not something that is strange? It's not as though no one had ever referred to Caesar as a god. They didn't invent that. They say this because Caesar views himself as a god, and they say, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and agree with that. And you have to remember too that monotheism is like not the norm, and so like if there are lots of gods, it'd be weird to think that you were God as in singular. But if there's like lots of gods, sure, like maybe if I'm like
it's an open field,
no
right?
problem taking over the world, maybe I am one.
Yeah. That is another thing to keep in mind that I think we often forget about, because today, even among non-religious people, if you ask them, how many gods are there, most people would say one.
Yeah,
because we're not in a polytheistic, not objectively the way that people think in a polytheistic worldview. But yeah, in the ancient world, the Jews were the exception. They were unique. They were the only ones who were monotheists. I mean, they were the weirdos, right? Theological weirdos of the ancient world, because they believed in just one God. And yeah, the Greeks and the Romans, they made exceptions for these strange Jews who only believed in one God. Okay, you don't have to fully embrace our pantheon of gods. Just say that you will offer sacrifice or pray for the emperor, and we'll let this one slide. So they had the monotheistic exception clause for the Jews, but not for anybody else. So they were strange in the eyes of the ancient world.
Yeah, and it's not as though this guy says that all those countries' gods weren't gods. He just says that they were not able to deliver them. And he doesn't say that the God of Israel is not a God. He just says, yeah, he's just not going to be a problem for me.
Yeah. Not a good enough God, or not a strong enough God for the Assyrians. Okay, so he makes his speech, ends it, and how does everyone respond? Well, they don't really. Verse 21 says that they were silent and answered him not a word, because the king had given this command, do not answer him. And then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph, the recorder, these three that we heard mentioned before. Two of whom actually we've heard about before, Eliakim and Shebna. You may remember we talked about them, I think, back in chapter 22. It was the whole key of David, that whole section. Well, anyway, we heard their names before. These three, they come to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. So they bring back word to Hezekiah as to what was said, what was threatened by this representative of Sennacherib. Then we switch chapters, chapter 37. So we're going to hear now what Hezekiah's response to this is going to be. So they get back to Hezekiah, and they report to him what was said. He hears it, and he too tore his clothes. And not only that, but he switched clothes. He covered himself with sackcloth. And he went into the house of the Lord. So he goes up to the temple, which that section reminds me of, there's a couple lines in Psalm 73 which have this same idea. So Asaph wrote Psalm 73, and he was troubled by the prosperity and the ease of the wicked. And he's trying to figure this out. Why is this so? And he even says that I've tried to keep my heart pure, and I've washed my hands in innocence, but it was all in vain, because I'm not prospering and they are. And then he says, when he was trying to understand this, he says, this is verse 11, until I went into the sanctuary of God, and then I discerned their end. So there's this idea that when you really want to figure stuff out, when you really want to ponder the mysteries and the problems, what do? Well, to use our language, you go to church. You go to the sanctuary. And because that's where God had promised to be. And he says, I'm going to put my name there, my presence there. This is his earthly dwelling place. And so when you really want to appear before God, well, you literally appear before him when you go to his house, to his temple. This is what Hezekiah does. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna, the secretary, and the senior priest, covered with sackcloth. He sent them on this mission too. And where do they go? Well, they go to our prophet, Isaiah, the son of Amos. And here's what they say to him. Thus says Hezekiah, this day is a day of distress, of rebuke, and of disgrace. Children have come to the point of birth, In the Hebrew, that's literally, this is a typical difference between English and Hebrew. Hebrew uses an anatomical term, which some have translated the cervical opening. So children have come to the cervical opening. They've come to that point where they should be getting ready to be born, come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to mock the living God, and will rebuke the words that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, this is Hezekiah speaking through his messengers to Isaiah. Therefore, lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left. So Hezekiah goes to the temple. He's in sackcloth. He's torn his clothes. He's gonna pray to God. But he also sends a group to to Isaiah, basically saying, this is a terrible day. We're at the point where we're like a pregnant woman who needs to birth this child, and the child's not going anywhere. There's no strength left in her. Or what's going to happen? Well, she's going to die, right? We're at the point of death. And the hope is that God will hear these mocking words that have been spoken by the king of Assyria through his messenger, and that God will not only hear, but will rebuke and will act. And what he asks Isaiah to do, this is interesting too, he basically says to Isaiah, we need you to pray. We need you to reach out to God and pray. And Isaiah doesn't even pray. He just as we'll hear in the next few verses, he's got a response already. He's got the word of the Lord's already come to him.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And Isaiah does seem like, he's been saying a lot of things, and he's probably like, oh, finally someone's going to ask me for my, what's going to happen here? Go to the Lord for us. And it's like, oh, all right, well, it's about time.
Yeah. I've been trying to talk to you guys for a long time, so thanks for showing up and asking for my advice. Yeah, so here's what he says. This is verse 5. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, and Isaiah says to them, you almost get the feeling like they show up, they don't even get a word out, and Isaiah's like, all right, here's what you need to say to the king. Isaiah said to them, say to your master, thus says the Lord, don't be afraid because of the words that you have heard, with which the young men of the king of Assyria have reviled me. So this is probably should be translated in a pejorative sense. So this is not the word for servants. The word that's used here is like some have suggested underlings or flunkies. So, those flunkies, those guys who were like the Rabshakeh who's making these great boasts outside the city. Well, those flunkies from the king of Assyria, yeah, they have reviled me. Don't worry about any of that. Verse 7, behold, I will put a spirit in him so that he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land. And I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. Now there's a don't worry, I've got this covered kind of section.
Yeah. Yeah, and you almost get this impression like I'll put a spirit in him so that he shall hear a rumor. It's almost as if like he'll manufacture this rumor to himself, right? Like, yes. Well, who's going to tell you this rumor? You're just going to hear it in your own head.
Yeah, I'm going to make him irrationally afraid of something.
Yeah,
and he's going to run away. Yeah, it's just a perfect response. I love the brevity of it too. The Rabshakeh stands outside there, and he's got this long, rhetorical speech. This is going to happen if you don't surrender. It's going to be terrible. But if you do surrender, I'm going to make everything beautiful for you. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to give you all this stuff. And Isaiah's response from God is basically, don't pay attention to those guys. They don't know what they're talking about. Bunch of flunkies. Just trust me. I've got this handled. I'm going to get rid of this guy. And he's going to die. I'm going to make him fall by his own sword in his own land, which we know happened. It was many years after this, but it's coming up later on. But 2 of his own sons will kill him. In fact, that will be his end. He messes with God's people, and his own people, his own family members, actually take him out much later on.
It's you might have crossed the line. You're going to mess with God's people, which sometimes God's people get messed with, especially when they've rebelled a whole lot. But man, you went like kind of above and beyond because you started not just like saying, hey, we're just going to take your city. So that's the way it is. But you started speaking for the Lord. You started insulting the Lord, and now you've got an issue. And yeah, it is great that I say his response is basically like, yeah, none of that's going to happen.
Yeah. That is the perfect response. Oh yeah, those guys are just full of hot air. Yeah. None of it's going to go down.
He doesn't even know. He doesn't even need to know what they said. Like, hey, these guys said, yeah, I don't care.
Pay no attention to their words. Yeah, you got to love the confidence of the prophet when God has spoken to him, and there's like no hesitation. He's like, nah, this is what God told me to tell you. It's all going to be fine. So verse 8, picking up the story, back to the Assyrian spokesman, the Rabshakeh returned. So he goes back, leaves Jerusalem, goes back. And he found the king of Assyria fighting against Livnah. And we really don't know where Livnah is at. Precise location is unknown, but the king of Assyria was there. For he had heard that the king had left Lachish. So goes from Lachish, he's fighting now in Livnah. Now the king heard concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush, Cush being, of course, part of Africa near modern-day Ethiopia. He had heard concerning this leader, Tirhakah, king of Cush, that he has set out to fight against you. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, kind of a lot of back and forth here. So the king hears about this threat coming from the people of Cush, that they're moving their military might to take on the Assyrians. A lot of political movements going on here. So he sends messengers to Hezekiah, saying this, thus you shall speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah. Don't let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you by promising that Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Syria. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands, devoting them to destruction. And shall you be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them, the nations that my fathers destroyed, Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and all the people of Eden who were in Telassar? Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of the city of the Sepharvaim, the king of Hena, or the king of Ivah? Yeah, I don't know where half those places are, but the point is, the Assyrians have taken out all these places. Their gods didn't deliver them, the kings didn't deliver them, and so don't trust in Hezekiah, claiming that the God of Hezekiah is going to deliver you.
Is the move here to say, like, okay, so some stuff came up, so I'm not going to be doing this right now, but don't think that it's not going to happen. Like that's they don't think if you see us turn to go take care to go address this other thing that I'm hearing about, don't think that I won't be back.
Precisely. Yeah, this is the I'll be back moment, Arnold Schwarzenegger moment. I'll be back, and when I come back, then I'm going to make good on the promise, the threat rather, that I already gave to you. So don't think, just because we're dealing with this other conflict, that everything's going to be okay with you. Yeah,
and don't see. This is the thing. When you fancy yourself sort of this God, like what he doesn't want, like this is how ego works. Like I don't want to hear about like the people having some celebration that their God has delivered them or whatever. I'm just taking care of something else right now.
Yeah, that's exactly how ego works. So evidently, this message that I just read in those verses was written down in a letter. So we're going to hear about this letter now in verses 14 and following. So Hezekiah received the letter that would have had these words in it from the hand of the messengers, and he read it. And then Hezekiah goes up to the house of the Lord. And in this move, which I kind of appreciate, he takes this letter and he spreads it out before the Lord. So he's opening the letter. It's got all of these insulting words from the king of Assyria. Spreads it out there at the temple. And he prays. And here's his prayer. Verse 16. O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, enthroned above the cherubim, you are the God. You alone of all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. So in other words, you're the God of the Assyrians also, right? Yeah, you're not just the God of Israel. Yes, you are. So if you think of him at the temple, you're enthroned above the cherubim, right here in front of me in that Holy of Holies. So I know you're here, and you're our God, but you're also the God of all the kingdoms of the earth. You made everything. So of course you're the God of every kingdom. He goes on, incline your ear, O Lord, and hear, and open your eyes and see, and hear all the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock the living God. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations and their lands. So he's not disputing that. And they've cast their gods into the fire. He's not disputing that either. But here's what he says. He says, why did this happen? For they were no gods. They were the work of men's hands, just wood and stone. Therefore, they were destroyed. So now, O Lord our God, save us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are the Lord. There's some not so great prayers in the scriptures, but this is a pretty good one.
Yeah, I like it. I kind of envision him going in there, spreading this out, and be like, read this. Which is like that's the right move. So you notice that what makes this prayer good is that Hezekiah doesn't appeal to the right things he's done, or that he's trying real hard, or like that the people will turn back to from their evil ways, and none of that. Like he doesn't do any of that. He just says, check this letter out. I mean, there's some truth in it. Like they've done a lot of destruction, but those people didn't have like a real God. So
yeah, there's some awesome theology that's embedded there. Yeah, of course. I'm not disputing the fact the Assyrians have bulldozed all these nations and kings and threw all their gods into the fire. Well, that's what happens to no gods. It's wood.
Yeah.
So you burn it. It's stone, so you crush it. That's what happens to these fake gods. They get destroyed. And the people that worship them get destroyed too. But you're the only true God, and so act in such a way as to make it abundantly clear that you, in fact, are the only true God, and that you alone are the one who's over all the kingdoms of the earth. It's kind of an Egyptian Exodus kind of motif also. Make sure the Assyrians know, as the Egyptians once figured out, that the God of Israel is the one true God when you act to save your people.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to when you need some deliverance or anything to appeal to God and not to appeal to God, but really be appealing to something else, which is so when Moses does this with God, I always think of this when God's like, "Yep, Moses, you didn't want to do this in the first place, and I think maybe you were right. This is horrible. So I'm just going to kill everyone, and just be you and me after that, and then we'll just kind of hit the restart." And Moses doesn't be like, "Ow!" But like some of them aren't so bad, or I think I can turn them around, or just give me more time with them. I think like after a while they'll start to straighten up. No, he just says like, you can't do that because you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always best just to appeal to God and just say, "Hey, are you God or nah?" That's what Hezekiah is doing here.
Those are the best prayers. I'm thinking of some Psalms that are like that too. Yeah, you appeal directly to who God is and the promises that God has made, and tell him basically to be who you are and be true to the promises that you have made. That's the best thing you can always do. I'll often say something like, if God hasn't promised something unconditionally, well, then you pray, thy will be done. I don't know if God wants me to get better if I'm sick. So I pray for healing, but then I say thy will be done. But if I ask God to forgive my sins, I don't say, forgive my sins if it's according to your will.
Right.
I already know what his will is. His will is to forgive my sins. So I can say to him, God, you have promised that, if we confess our sins, you are faithful and just to forgive those sins. And so I'm calling upon you to do that. And we can do that with boldness and confidence because we're saying to God, you promised, so be true to your promises.
Yeah. I also feel like Hezekiah is saying, as he's got the letter and stuff, he's sort of showing this to God and saying, man, you've got a real great opportunity here.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, this guy's really setting you up to really do something.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a great way to think about that. And God does in quite the amazing way. He answers that. So we're moving on here to verse 21. Isaiah's got something else to say here. Isaiah the son of Amoz, sent to Hezekiah with something else to say. This is from the Lord, he says. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Because you have prayed to me concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning him. It's kind of nice. I mean, you pray, and then a prophet shows up and says, oh, yeah, here's God's answer to your prayer.
Yeah, that's nice.
That is, yeah. I haven't had that happen yet, but maybe one of these days. So here's what God says in response to Hezekiah's prayer. She despises you. She scorns you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She wags her head behind you. I was trying to think of a modern, because we don't talk about wagging the head anymore. I was thinking maybe rolling the eyes, maybe. Yeah. She rolls her eyes behind you, the daughter of Jerusalem. It's a mocking expression. So this is the Assyrians. This is how they're treating Zion. They're mocking her. They're rolling their eyes. Well, whom have you really mocked and reviled? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes to the heights? So who's really the one that's the object of all this scorn and reviling? Against the Holy One of Israel. That's what God says. By your servants you have mocked the Lord, and you have said, with my many chariots I have gone up to the heights of the mountains, to the far recesses of Lebanon, to cut down its tallest cedars, its choicest cypresses, to come to its remotest height, its most fruitful forest. I dug wells and drank waters, to dry up with the sole of my foot all the streams of Egypt. So this is, this mocking and boasting going on. First of all, they have, of course, despised and scorned and mocked the virgin daughter of Zion. Yeah, they're doing that. But who's the real object of this mocking and reviling and raising of their voices? Well, it's against God. You can't. Here's the thing. If somebody insults my wife or your wife, Dan, that insult is also against us.
Yeah.
And we're going to deal with it, right? You can't insult my wife and think I'm just going to stand there and not do something about it. You can't insult my daughter and think I'm just going to whatever. No, I'm going to act because you've insulted me also. Well, it's like you can insult the church and not also insult Christ. You can't insult the people of God in the Old Testament and not also insult God himself. And of course, they clearly did that when they were speaking disparagingly concerning who he was and basically saying you're on the same level as the gods of all these other peoples too. And then we have all, the boast. You claim that, I've done so many great things. I've gone up to the heights of the mountains. I've cut down all these tall trees. In fact, I'm so powerful that I'm drying up all the streams of Egypt with the sole of my foot. It's just this human arrogance that the Assyrians were so adept, so skilled at exercising. Well, God goes on to say, verse 26, have you not heard that I determined it long ago? I planned from days of old what now I bring to pass, that you should make fortified cities crashed into heaps of ruins, while their inhabitants shorn of strength are dismayed and confounded, and become like the plants of the field and like tender grass, like grass on the housetops, blighted before it's grown. Oh, you thought that you just came up with all of this and you accomplished this because you're so great? I was like, no, I mean, I talked about this a long time ago. You're doing my bidding, even though you're not only ignorant of me, but you like to belittle me and my people.
But it's almost as if God's saying, you know how you didn't attack Jerusalem because you were reacting to something that you didn't know was happening? That never happens to me. So I knew a long time ago how this was going to go. So I'm watching a movie I've seen 100 times.
Yeah, good way to put it.
No surprises here for me.
Yeah. This is going to be part of a major sermon of Isaiah in later chapters too, where God will say, I planned this long ago. All you got to do is look back, and I said this was going to happen. Contrary to the gods of wood and stone that people make, I actually know. I see past, present, and future. It's directly in front of me at all times. Nothing surprises me. And then he goes on in verse 28 to say, I know you're sitting down, and you're going out and coming in, and you're raging against me. I've always loved that. It's almost like a setup. Oh, I know when you sit down. I know when you go out. I know when you come in. And you know what else I know? I know you're raging against me. And because you have raged against me, and your complacency has come to my ears, here's what I'm going to do. And here's another great image. I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will turn you back on the way by which you came. This is God reducing this self-important, arrogant king of Assyria to the level of a beast. Put a hook in your nose and a bit in your mouth, and I'm going to ride you like the horse that you are.
Yeah, this is certainly God saying, this is not going to be that difficult for me. Like, that doesn't sound all that difficult. Like, this problem is as easy for me to solve as if you have an animal. If you got the reins of a horse, they got a bit in his mouth, and you decide we're going this way. That's the way that they're going. He's like, yeah, it's pretty much that easy for me.
Yeah, this has got to be quite the humiliating speech for anyone who's filled full of hubris to hear. Oh yeah, I can turn you whichever way I want you to turn, and I'll know it, but you won't realize it until it's too late and it's already happening. And then, so he leaves behind the poetry, and he goes on to some prose. And he says, this shall be the sign for you. This year, so now he's speaking to the people of Judah and Jerusalem. This shall be the sign for you. This year, you shall eat what grows of itself, and in the second year, what springs from that. Then in the third year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. Some have suggested that this might be in reference to the Jubilee year. If it is, the Jubilee year was every 50th year, and you know there's no sowing. You just reap what grows of itself. If so, this is the only reference, historical reference in the Old Testament to its being celebrated. So could be what's going on here. Either way, God is basically saying, don't worry about what you're going to eat. It's just going to spring up from the soil of itself. You're going to have plenty of fruit and grain. And the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. For the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. So he transitions from that agricultural imagery, which I think is quite literal. You're going to have plenty to eat. The crops are going to grow. He switches from that to talking about the people. You're going to take root too. You're going to take root downward. In other words, you're not going to be uprooted. You're going to be downrooted. You're going to be secure, and you're going to bear fruit also, because God's going to make sure there's always a remnant, a band of survivors in Jerusalem and there at Mount Zion. And this is going to be accomplished not because you're such great people or because of some military endeavor, but it's all because of God's zeal, which is linked up, of course, with his devotion to Israel. His zealous devotion to Israel is going to make this happen.
Yeah, whenever the zeal of the Lord comes into play, you know that he's not doing this reluctantly, right? When the zeal is invoked, you know that he's going to do this, and that he desires to do it.
Yeah, this is his heartfelt ardor. I mean, he's zealous for his people. He's jealous for his people. He's going to make sure his people are taken care of. And when that happens, things will happen for the good of his people. And we'll see. We're out of time now, but we'll see in those next few verses what happens and how the zeal of the Lord brings this about for the people of Judah and Jerusalem.
All right. Well, we are out of time, so we'll leave it there. We will pick it up. He's got more to say next episode. Chad, I will see you then.
See you then.